Welcome to the session on foreign trade policy of the Government of India. In today's session, we will talk about the schemes under the foreign trade policy and the various procedures which are required to apply for those schemes with a perspective of an exporter. Friends, the learning objective of this session is to give you a primer on what are the schemes, where can you apply for these schemes, what are the documents and the eligibility criteria for these schemes, and also how can you keep yourself updated about the various changes which are there in the foreign trade policy. It is common understanding that if an exporter uses all these schemes to his maximum advantage, the prices which he can offer to a buyer abroad are much more competitive. So friends, the policy which has been made is made keeping in mind the broad objective of making our exports competitive. The current foreign trade policy, which was launched on 1st April 2015, is in operation till March 2020. The legal provisions under which the Directorate General of Foreign Trade is implementing the foreign trade policy and procedures are under the FTD&R Act. Friends, this act was framed to facilitate and regulate the foreign trade of our nation. There are few important sections which we all should be aware of. The section 5 is the section which provides for the overarching powers. Section 3 subclause 2 is related to the various HS codes and their specific regulations. So we'll talk about this later, wherein we will see that some products are restricted or prohibited and there are special rules governing those products. So that power is through the section 3.2. And then we have the other section 6, which is basically the implementing provision under which the DGFT is implementing the policy. Friends, the organizational structure of DGFT is something which we should all take note of, because an exporter who is located in, suppose, a town which is in hinterlands may not be aware as to where his jurisdiction falls. So just like we have district administrations wherein the jurisdiction for that district is vested with the concerned collectorate office, similarly under the foreign trade policy, all the territory in India has been divided so that the exporter which is located at any one place is under the jurisdiction of one office, and that list, friends, is under Appendix 1A. So appendices and Ayat Niryat forms are two additional documents which are the part of the foreign trade policy, under which many lists and other such documents which are relevant to the exporting community are present. We have 4 zonal offices, so in the sense it is governed by the headquarters, but there are 4 other big offices which are there in Delhi, Kolkata, Mumbai and Chennai. Friends, I was talking about the documents which are there, which contain the provisions of the FTP. So let us go through them one by one. We have the foreign trade policy, which is the core document. The major document under the FTDR Act is the FTP. Then there is an handbook of procedures. This document basically provides for the various procedures which the exporter need to follow before applying for certain schemes under the FTP. And then there are the appendices and the Ayat Niryat forms. So the module and the mechanism by which an exporter applies is through the submission of some documents. So before giving any grant or benefit or scheme benefit to any of the exporters, the government wants certain details from the exporters, and those details are required to be filled in the Ayat Niryat forms. Then we have something known as the SION, Standard Input Output Norms, which is required for schemes which are implemented under the chapter 4 of the foreign trade policy, and we will talk about this later also. And I'm sure the Indian trade classification ITCHS system uh, is is something which all exporters know. This is the 8-digit code-wise import and export policy for the exporters, and this is in line with what the codes are there by the at the time of export and import by the customs authorities also. So now the FTP is a comprehensive document, and it has a flow in the sense it first talks about the general provisions of export and import. So the chapter 1 was about the legal provisions. Now the chapter 2 is about the various general provisions on import and export, which cover things such as IEC, the Import Exporter Code, the various principles of restrictions on which certain goods are restricted to be imported and exported. And then there are provisions for which special procedure has to be followed by exporters in case they want to export or import certain items. Then there is something known as SCOMET, which is COMET items. So these are special chemicals, organisms, materials, equipment, and technologies. So if any of the firms they want to export these items, a special authorization is required before they can export these items, and the procedure for that is also defined in the chapter 2 of the foreign trade policy. Certain bodies which have been set up in collaboration with the Ministry of Commerce, and the purpose of these bodies is to promote exports, are the export promotion councils, and these are divided on the basis of sectors. For example, for engineering goods we have the EEPC India. For textiles we have the Textile Promotion Council, the Texprocil. We have the Synthetic Rayon and Textiles Export Promotion Council, which is SRTEPC. For pharmaceuticals we have Pharmexil. So these export promotion councils are bodies which have been created so that the exporters of that specific sector are able to get important knowledge and awareness about the various events which are happening all across the globe, and also to handhold or guide or mentor the exporters in competing with the international trade scenario. And the various other schemes which are there by the government of India, not only DGFT but the export promotion councils are also a storehouse of knowledge about the other policies and schemes which are implemented by the government of India from other ministries. One of the important and very useful provisions in the foreign trade policy is the option of policy relaxation which is available to the exporters. The policy has been framed keeping in mind certain aspects, but there are cases in which, due to circumstances beyond the control of the exporter, he or she might not be able to fulfill the criteria set in the relevant scheme. So in order to avoid or to prevent the exporter in falling into any genuine hardship, the provision of a policy relaxation is there, under which the DGFT along with a committee sits and decides whether any policy relaxation could be given to the concerned exporter for a certain case. Friends, in the overall scheme of things, the first and most important thing to know is, in principle, all goods are free to be imported and exported unless they are restricted or prohibited. So, in India, we have currently around more than 11,000 HS codes and items, and only few of them are under the restricted category and a few of them are under the prohibited category. So there is a slight difference between restricted and prohibited. Restricted items are those for which import and export can be done, but it can be done only with the help of an authorization which is required to be taken from the DGFT. Prohibited items are completely prohibited for export and import, and they cannot be imported and exported by the process of taking authorization. Then we have already talked about the SCOMET items. These items are again important because we have to follow certain international treaties and conventions, and for which the special provisions for export have been framed. Now, friends, there are the chapters in the foreign trade policy which involve some duty exemption, some benefit, or some duty remission. The chapter 3 of the foreign trade policy has been historically about the various incentives or rewards which are being given to the exporting community. The current foreign trade policy has the scheme known as the Merchandise Exports from India Scheme, MEIS in short, under which if an exporter has exported the goods which are mentioned in the list of the MEIS, which is the Appendix 3B Table 2, then he is eligible for a certain percentage of the total value of the shipping bill or the amount which has been realized by the export of those items, whichever is less. And these rates at present are in the range of 2% to 20%. So we have rates at 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 10 and 20. And the benefits which are being given under the MEIS, they are in the form of a duty credit scrip. So the duty credit scrip, once issued to an exporter, can be used by the exporter to pay basic custom duty for importing all kind of items at the customs port, in the sense that the whatever basic custom duty which is applied can be debited by the debiting of those duty credit scrip. And also these scrips are transferable. So a person who has the ownership of a scrip can transfer that scrip to another exporter who might be willing to use it and pay for it. Now the complete list with the relevant rates for the products is available at the DGFT portal, and we will identify how to find out that link and those rates when we walk through the DGFT portal. The application for the MEIS, friends, is completely online, and there is no involvement of any submission of documents in physical form to any of the regional offices. The other scheme which is implemented under the rewards category in the chapter 3 of the Government of India is the Service Exports from India scheme. And under this SEIS scheme, the notified services and rates of rewards are listed in Appendix 3D. So in MEIS we had this Appendix 3B Table 2. In SEIS we have this Appendix 3D, under which the various categories of services are listed. The one limiting criteria which is there in SEIS is that the service provider who is going to claim benefit should have net free foreign exchange earnings of at least $15,000 in the year in which the claim is being made. The application for SEIS again is made online in the form ANF 3B. The form is also available for everybody to see in the soft form in the ANF 3B at the DGFT website. The most recent change which we have done in ANF 3B is through the public notice which is dated 28 June, in which the details and the information which is required to be submitted by an applicant while claiming for SEIS scheme has been outlined. The SEIS scheme, the benefit is again given under the duty credit scrip mechanism, wherein the duty credit scrip is issued to the service exporters, and either he or she can sell that scrip in the market just like the MEIS scrip, or they can also use that scrip to pay the basic custom duty. So in essence, the utility of both MEIS and SEIS scrips is the same. Now friends, the scrips are at present valid for 24 months, in the sense that From the date of issue of the scrip, the importer is allowed to use that scrip within 24 months. And after that, even if there is certain balance remaining in that scrip, in normal circumstances, the scrip is not revalidated or its lifetime is not extended. The chapters 4 and 5 are the next category of benefits or schemes which are being implemented on the FTP, and these are related to duty exemption or remission. So an industry can have certain advantages by using these schemes, and the advantage is in the form of waiver, which is exemption, or return of the taxes which have been paid by the importer, provided these goods are used in the manufacture of exported product. So for inputs, we have the scheme known as the advance authorization scheme. We have variant scheme known as the duty free import authorization scheme, and there is a duty drawback scheme, which is basically a duty remission scheme in which the duty is first paid and then a claim on the duty already paid is made. This duty drawback scheme is implemented by the Department of Revenue, Ministry of Finance. So for inputs, we had the schemes which I just mentioned, but for capital goods, which include the machinery by the use of which the export product is being made, we have the export promotion capital goods scheme, which is both pre-export, which is the EPCG scheme in the usual sense, and we have a variant known as the post-export EPCG scheme. So friends, more details about the advance authorization and related schemes should be discussed, because this is one scheme which is very popular among the exporters who are critically linked in the various global supply chains. So when the exporter wants to import certain inputs from abroad and then intends to physically utilize or consume that input in the manufacture of the export product, they avail this scheme. So when they apply to the government, they apply on the basis of certain standard input output norms which are notified. So for a product which is being exported, there are certain tables in the form of the standard input output norms which contain the proportionate inputs which are required in the mentioned quantities for the defined amount of a export product. So for example, to make 1 kg of an pharmaceutical product, what is the exact amount of raw material which is required is mentioned in the standard input output norms. So based on these norms, the exporter can apply for advance authorization. The option of applying for a item for which the standard input output norm has not been defined is also present in the advance authorization scheme. That is on the basis of self declaration, and these are in the normal day-to-day language we call it the ad hoc norms. So the norms have not been fixed, but still the applicant can apply for those norms, apply for those advance authorization based on ad hoc norms, and these ad hoc norms which the exporter has self declared would be then checked and ratified by a norms committee, and the authorization is given. The midterm review of the foreign trade policy, the government of India has come out with another scheme, which is the advance authorization scheme on a self ratification basis. So authorized economic operators, which are the exporters which have been categorized as authorized economic operator by the customs, they are allowed to avail the benefit of the self ratification scheme. The other two variants of the advance authorization scheme are the special scheme for textile sector and the duty free import authorization scheme. The basic concept is the same. If an exporter wants to import certain inputs which is being utilized or consumed in the export product, the basic custom duty and the IGST component on that imported input would be exempted from being paid, provided in a certain period the imported inputs are utilized in the manufacture of export product and the exported products are exported abroad and the payment for that export product is there in the exporter's account. So based on this triangulation of first the imported inputs and then the export of products and the realization for those exported products, the advance realization is later redeemed or the obligation which the exporter have taken is closed by the Government of India. The various details of how the exporter can apply and in what format can they apply for the closure of the advance realization is there in the handbook of procedures, which available again on the DGFT website. Friends, the next scheme is the export promotion capital goods scheme. Just like we had the scheme for inputs, we have this scheme for capital goods. The import of capital goods at zero customs duty and zero IGST and the compensation cess is allowed under the export promotion capital goods scheme, provided the imported capital good is used to export goods which are manufactured within 6 years and the duty saved amount, which is the amount which is wiped off at the time of import of goods, at least 6 times of that duty saved amount has been exported. So based on this data and information, once an authorization is taken, it can be closed by the applicant after the period of 6 years or even before that period of 6 years, if the obligation, which is the export obligation of 6 times of duty saved amount and within 6 years is done and the proof that effect is submitted to the Government of India. Under the EPCG scheme and the advance realization scheme, friends, both schemes, the procurement of either inputs under the advance realization and capital goods from the Indian market, which is the indigenous manufacturers, is allowed, provided the part which is being sourced from the local market or the Indian suppliers is invalidated. The procedure for this again is there in the handbook of procedures. There are certain other provisions of the foreign trade policy which are the provisions of chapter 6, in which the broad principles on the export oriented units, the software technology parks and biotechnology parks are mentioned. So in summary, these are special units which have been given long-term exemption from payment of duties, provided they have a net free foreign exchange earning in a certain time period. The approval for such units and the various other provisions are there in the chapter 6. So normally exporters who have units in these categories of units operate under the provisions of the chapter 6, and the provisions of chapter 3, 4 and 5 usually do not apply. Then there are provisions for deemed exports which are there in chapter 7. The terminology deemed exports, friends, is to define items which are exported in the sense that foreign currency has been realized by the export of those goods, but the goods as such do not leave the country. So these are termed as deemed exports. The provisions for deemed exports in the GST rules is also there, and these are a bit different because they are governed by the corresponding GST rules and provisions. So for foreign trade policy, the deemed exports and its provisions should be read in the context of the deemed exports in the GST rules also, so that the complete understanding of the provisions of deemed exports is made. While we are dealing with international trade, there is an obvious chance of some disputes to arise between an importer and exporter, and these disputes can be on multiple issues such as the quality of the product, the timelines under which the exported item was committed to be delivered but has not been delivered. Then there are issues related to payment, and in the worst case, we have also cases of fraud and complete non obligation of the contract. A mechanism has been evolved under the Chapter 8 of the Foreign Trade Policy, under which an applicant can apply to the Government of India and let us know that various details of the dispute which has arisen. And the Government of India, partnership with the various embassies and missions which we have all across the world, tries to mediate and negotiate and try to resolve the disputes so that our international relations are also not hampered and the disputes which are amenable to resolution are resolved. So friends, with these, the schemes under the foreign trade policy have been covered, but there are certain other schemes or provisions which are also useful for exporters, and one of these is the Market Access Initiative Scheme, which is governed by the Department of Commerce, Ministry of Commerce and Industry. Now, the scheme's objective is to play a role for promoting exports, for exploring new markets, and promoting export-oriented activities. Now, these export-oriented activities can be related to setting up stalls in exhibitions, other direct or indirect activities for marketing, capacity building, branding, and to follow certain regulatory and statutory compliances in the destination countries. This scheme is available to the various agencies like the Export Promotion Councils and to certain other industry associations who, on the behalf of the exporters, apply for funds under the scheme to the Department of Commerce. The broad guidelines and other rules are there in the circular number, which is 11/197/2016, dated 16th February 2018. So I would like all of you to go to this document and find out to which export promotion councils and to which associations can you go and seek help if you want to take the benefit of this scheme. There is another scheme which is the interest equalization scheme, which is being run by the Government of India, but it's monitored by the RBI, and the dispersal of the funds under this scheme is through the banks. The scheme provides for interest equalization at 3% per annum on the pre-shipment rupee export credit and post-shipment rupee export credit. Friends, this scheme is available to all exports of 416 HS codes or tariff lines and to all exports which are being made by the MSME enterprises. The idea behind this scheme is to compensate a bit the exporters because the interest rates in a developing nation like India are uncompetitive as compared to the interest rates which are there in other countries of the world which are major exporting powers. So friends, with this, the part which talks about the foreign trade policy is over, and I would like you all to now go through the DGFT portal with me so that you can understand as to how can you take the maximum benefit out of the information which is already available in a very user-friendly format at the DGFT portal. So let us go to the DGFT portal now. After having discussed the various provisions of the foreign trade policy, it will be useful if we can have a walkthrough to the DGFT portal, which is www.dgft.gov.in. So friends, now I am at the DGFT portal. Here there are various links which open up into other such sublinks wherein the necessary information can be accessed. So let us first understand about the services which are being available to the exporters while they are applying for any of the schemes of the Government of India under the FTP. So here we have this e-com. This e-com is the link wherein you will be taken up to the URL wherein you can file the various applications under the foreign trade policy in an online environment. So as you can see on the left side of this e-com module, we have the various scheme names. So you can click to this links and then a new page will open up wherein you can file your relevant application. So there are certain schemes which are completely online, such as MEIS, and there are certain schemes in which you might require to submit certain additional documents like for redemption of advance authorization. But the government is working to make all the schemes online as soon as possible. So now going back to the main website, herein the other important link is policies, wherein you can go to the foreign trade policy link and find out what is the current FTP in its most updated form. So here, as you can see, the foreign trade policy document which was released at the time of the midterm review is there. So you can download this and view this, and you can also save it at your desktop for your future reference. Similarly, we have the foreign trade procedure, which will again guide you towards what are the various forms and other rules which needs to be followed before applying for a scheme from your related to your exports while sitting at home. So this is the foreign trade procedure document, wherein the rules and various forms and other regulations have been spelled out. Similarly, friends, we have certain other useful links in the portal. You can have the brief look of the FTDR Act, FTDNR rules, and then, friends, remember I mentioned in the lecture about the meetings which are happening in the DGFT headquarters. So there are certain meetings which are held to help some genuine hardship of an exporter in the terms of policy relaxation. So minutes of those kind of meetings can be accessed in the minutes of meeting link. So as you can see here, after I open up the minutes of meetings link, the various minutes of the meeting, that means the record of discussion as to what has happened in those kind of meetings, is uploaded on the website. And exporters who have applied to such meetings for consideration of their case, they can update themselves as to what has happened on their application by downloading and reading the various meetings. Now coming back to the main portal, you can see there is a link at the left side of the portal wherein some quick links have been provided. For example, the first is contact at DGFT service for complaints, queries and suggestions. This is a very popular link based on this usage. So once you click on this, you are taken to a portal or a link wherein, after submitting some preliminary information, any query or any grievance which you have about the various schemes of the foreign trade policy, and also regarding any of your pending applications, the exporters can feed in their query, and a ticket is raised once they feed their query, and based on that ticket or the reference number, you can update yourself as to what has happened to your query. So this facility has been provided so that the exporters are not required to visit the field offices to inquire about the pending applications or any other such issue. Then there are certain other links. So if you have applied for your IEC and you have got your IEC and you want to check whether your IEC, which is the importer exporter code, has been transmitted to the ICE gate, you can check that in this link, which is this welcome to ICE gate, where you can feed in your IEC code and the captcha, and then you will be informed whether your IEC, which has been generated by the DGFT, has been transmitted to customs. Also useful in terms of being updated about the various changes which is happening in the policy, and also any other certain announcements which are being made by DGFT, you can follow this DGFT India handle on Twitter. Regularly, the DGFT India handle is being updated, and we are using this platform to disseminate quick information to all the export. Again, friends, as you all know, the policies and procedures which have been framed are being changed based on the demands of the industry to keep abreast with the international trade scenario. So such changes in the foreign trade policy are by means of notifications. So you can go to the notifications by clicking on this link of notifications, wherein you can search the various notifications which have been published for changing the foreign trade policy. Any change in the foreign trade procedure, friends, is notified through a public notice. So if you click on the public notice link, the changes in the handbook of procedures document would be through this link, wherein you can find date wise and number wise all the relevant changes through the public notice have been listed. One other aspect of the DGFT portal is its richness of data in terms of the data it captures for export and import. So if we go to the bottom of the DGFT web page, there are these trade statistics and analytics, wherein there are various links to which you can go and find out the export import data of India, which has been segregated commodity and country wise, and this will help you to analyze your product, whether the product is growing or the exports of that product is growing from India or not. Then friends, there is one very important link which is query ITC-HS based MEIS rates, which is under export and import guidance. So MEIS, as we have just discussed, is a chapter 3 reward scheme, wherein for every HS code a certain percentage of benefit is being given under MEIS. So if you know your ITC-HS code, you can find out what is the current rate of that product under MEIS. So for example, if I search the product 6304, the first 4 digit of this of ITC-HS, and then I click show. So all the items which the first 4 digit of 6304 which have been provided MEIS are listed, and I would briefly inform as to how to read this. So if you go to the code 63041100, you can see there are multiple entries. So effective date is 1st April 15. From 1st April 15, the rate is 5%. Then you can see that on 1st November 2017, this rate has been increased to 7. So which means that if the shipment of that product 63041100 has been done after 1st November 2017, then the applicable MEIS rate is 7%. So accordingly, you can view all this with the click of a mouse. And for simplicity purpose, I had initially put in this code of 6304. You can also feed any 8-digit code and find out the exact rate for that product itself. So friends, I'm sure that with these links on the website, you will be able to know about the various changes in the policy and procedure, and also be able to keep yourself abreast with the most recent and updated trade data. So with this, the portal has been explained to you, and it is hoped that you will be keeping touch with the DGFT through this portal. In this session, friends, we have talked about the various components of the foreign trade policy. The chapter 2 was about the general provisions on import and export, which are applicable to all exports and imports, even if you are not taking any benefit or rewards from the Government of India. Chapter 3 was about the merchandise exports from India scheme and the services exports from India scheme, which is for goods export and services export respectively. Chapter 4 was a duty exemption scheme named as advance authorization, its various variants, wherein an exporter is allowed to import duty-free material provided that material is consumed in the manufacture of exported product. Similarly, for capital goods, we have this export promotion capital goods scheme, under which a capital good can be imported provided it is used for manufacture of an export product over a period of 6 years. Then we had other provisions of the policy which was about the EOUs, the export oriented units, ESTPs, SEZs, and then we have some schemes related to the deemed export. The chapter 8, if you remember friends, was about the trade disputes which arise while international transactions are taking place. The exporters have an option of filling a form and coming to the government of India with their grievance, which will be taken up with the concerned countries to resolve those trade disputes. And also we had a walkthrough on the DGFT portal. The common takeaway from this session is all the information which is required for effectively doing your exports and imports is available in the public domain. So without being intimidated by the regulations and rules, it is expected that an exporter does some due diligence, studies the policy and the rules, and then takes maximum advantage of those rules so that the products which he is exporting in the international market are competitive. With this, I wish you all the very best in all your export endeavors.